My name's Marco. I'm 29, and I've been tattooing for 8 years at a shop called Blackbird Ink on Portland's east side. Most mornings start the same way. I wake up around 9 in my studio apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant, the smell of faux broth already drifting through the vents. I make coffee in a French press that's held together with duct tape, scroll through my appointment book, and try to convince myself that today will be different from yesterday. That maybe today I won't feel the weight of all the things I've been carrying alone for too long. My hands smell like antiseptic and ink most days. There's always a faint stain of black or color under my fingernails no matter how hard I scrub. I wear the same uniform every shift: black jeans worn soft at the knees, black t-shirt, boots that have seen better days. My arms are covered in my own work and other artists' pieces, a patchwork sleeve that tells stories I don't have to explain out loud. The shop is a 15-minute walk from my place, tucked between a craft brewery and a vintage clothing store that never seems to have customers. Blackbird Ink has been around for 12 years. The owner, Rick, is a gruff guy in his 50s with a gray beard and a soft spot for artists who need a second chance. He hired me when I was 21, fresh out of a bad situation I don't talk about much. An ex-girlfriend who got violent when she drank, nights I spent walking the streets rather than going home, a restraining order I had to file when she showed up at my old job with a knife. Rick never asked about the scar on my shoulder or why I flinched when someone raised their voice. Just handed me a station, said the rent was due on the 1st, and told me to make art that mattered. I've been at that same station ever since. The shop smells like antiseptic, coffee from the pot, Rick brews too strong, and occasionally the weed someone's smoking in the alley out back. The walls are covered in flash art, old concert posters, and photos of our best work. There's a vintage barber chair by the window that clients love to sit in while they wait, flipping through binders of designs or scrolling their phones for inspiration they'll never commit to. My station is in the back corner, near the bathroom and away from the front windows. I like it that way. Less foot traffic, fewer people watching me work. I keep my space clean. Autoclave for sterilizing, bottles of ink organized by color, sketch pad always within reach, and a small speaker playing whatever lo-fi playlist keeps me calm that day. I have tattooed everything you can imagine: names of dead relatives, cover-ups of bad decisions, intricate sleeves that take months to complete, tiny symbols on wrists that mean more than they look. I'm good at what I do. My lines are clean, my shading smooth, and I know how to listen when a client's story spills out between the buzz of the machine and the sting of the needle. But I don't do relationships, not anymore. After everything that happened with Jenna, my ex, I decided people were too risky. Love was too risky. It's easier to keep things surface level. Smile, nod, do the work, collect the payment, move on. I've been on exactly 3 dates in the past 3 years, all setups from well-meaning friends who thought I just needed to get back out there. They all ended the same way. Me making an excuse halfway through, walking home alone, and feeling relieved to be by myself again. Solitude doesn't hurt you, people do. It was a Tuesday in early October when she first walked in. I was finishing up a session with a regular, a guy named Dave, who was adding to his sleeve of classic cars. We were almost done, just filling in the last bit of chrome detail on a '67 Mustang, when the bell above the door chimed. I glanced up out of habit. She stood just inside the entrance, hesitating like she wasn't sure she belonged there. Mid-40s maybe. Average height, curvy build, wearing jeans and a soft gray cardigan that looked well-worn and comfortable. Her hair was dark brown, shoulder length tucked behind her ears, and her face had the kind of lines that come from laughing a lot, or crying a lot, or both. She held a piece of paper in one hand, gripping it tightly, and her other hand fidgeted with the strap of her purse. Rick was at the front desk, and I heard him greet her in his usual gruff but friendly way. "Help you with something?" She nodded, unfolding the paper slowly. Her voice was soft when she spoke, tentative. "I want to get a tattoo. My first one. I have a design, kind of. I drew it myself, but I don't know if it makes sense." Rick took the paper, studied it for a moment, then looked up. "This is really nice. You want it exactly like this, or you want an artist to clean it up?" "Whatever works best," she said quietly. "I just want it to be right." Rick glanced back toward me. "Marco's the best we got for detailed work. You free after Dave?" I wiped down Dave's arm, peeled off my gloves, and nodded. "Yeah, I can do a consult." Dave paid and left, flexing his fresh ink in the mirror by the door with a satisfied grin. I cleaned my station, reset the space, and waited. The woman approached slowly, like she was approaching something sacred instead of a tattoo shop. "Hi," I said, gesturing to the chair. "I'm Marco. Have a seat." "Beth," she replied, sitting down carefully, still clutching that piece of paper. "First tattoo?" I asked, pulling up a stool. "Yeah." She let out a nervous laugh. "I never thought I'd do this, but here I am." "What made you decide?" She unfolded the paper again, smoothing it out on the armrest. It was a simple design. A lighthouse standing on a rocky shore, beam of light stretching out into darkness, with waves crashing at its base. Beneath it, in delicate script, "Michael." "My husband," she said quietly. "He died 2 years ago. Sudden heart attack. He was only 46. Her voice wavered but held steady. "He always said I was his lighthouse, that I kept him grounded when life got rough. I thought, I thought this might help me feel like he's still with me somehow." Her words hung in the air, heavy with grief that hadn't quite healed. I'd heard 1,000 stories in this chair, but something about hers hit different. Maybe because I knew what it felt like to lose someone and spend years trying to figure out how to carry them forward. I looked at the drawing again. It was good. Surprisingly good for someone who'd never done this before. The lighthouse had detail, dimension. "This is beautiful," I said. "Where were you thinking of putting it?" She touched her left shoulder blade. "Here. So it's always behind me, like he's watching my back." I nodded. "We can do that. Let me refine the design a little. Make sure it translates well to skin. You free for an appointment next week?" "Yeah," she said. "Anytime that works for you?" We booked her for the following Tuesday, same time. She thanked me, folded the paper back into her purse, and left quietly. I watched her go through the window. Something about the whole interaction sitting with me longer than I expected. Grief, I understood. I'd carried my own kind for years, though mine wasn't from death. It was from betrayal, from learning that the person you trusted most could hurt you in ways you never saw coming. But Beth's grief felt different. Cleaner, maybe. Like she was trying to honor something instead of bury it. The week passed in its usual rhythm. I tattooed a geometric wolf on a college kid's calf, a memorial piece for someone's grandmother, a cover-up of an ex's name that made the client cry with relief when it was done. Every night I went home, heated up leftover pho or made ramen, watched whatever was on Netflix, and tried not to think too hard about the fact that this was my life now, functional, stable, but lonely, in a way I'd convinced myself I preferred. When Tuesday came around again, Beth showed up exactly on time. She was wearing the same jeans, a different cardigan, this one navy blue. and she looked nervous. Not the kind of nervous people get before their first tattoo when they're worried about the pain. This was deeper, like she was about to do something that would make it all real. Ready? I asked as she settled into the chair. As I'll ever be, she said, her voice steady but tight. I showed her the refined design. I'd kept it almost identical to her original drawing, just cleaned up the lines and added more detail to the waves and the light beam. The script for Michael was elegant, flowing, the kind of lettering that would age well. It's perfect, she whispered, her eyes shining. I prepped her shoulder blade, shaving the area if needed, wiping it down with antiseptic. She tensed slightly at the cold, then relaxed. I applied the stencil carefully, making sure the placement was exactly where she wanted it. Check it in the mirror, I said. Make sure you're happy before I start. She stood, walked over to the full-length mirror, turned to see her back, and stared at the stencil for a long moment. Her hand came up, fingers hovering just over it, not quite touching. Yeah, she said finally, her voice thick. That's it? She sat back down, and I got to work. The buzz of the tattoo machine filled the space between us, a familiar hum that usually kept conversations minimal. Most clients either talk nonstop to distract themselves from the pain or stay silent, lost in their own heads. Beth was somewhere in between. She didn't flinch when the needle hit her skin, just exhaled slowly and kept her eyes forward. After a few minutes, she spoke. How long have you been doing this? 8 years, I said, keeping my focus on the lines. Started as an apprentice when I was 21. Never looked back. You're really talented, I can already tell. Thanks. You're handling the pain well for a first-timer. She let out a soft laugh. After 2 years of watching someone's chair sit empty at the dinner table, a tattoo needle doesn't seem so bad. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Just kept working. The lighthouse taking shape under my hands, each line deliberate and careful. He would have thought this was crazy, she said after a while. Michael. He was always the practical one, but he also said life's too short not to do the things that scare you a little. She paused. I guess this is me finally listening. What did he do? I asked, trying to keep the conversation flowing naturally. He was a firefighter, 20 years on the job, saved a lot of people. Her voice softened. He always said the hardest part wasn't the fires. It was coming home and pretending everything was normal when you'd just seen someone's world burn down. I glanced up briefly, saw the way her shoulders had tensed, the way her breathing had gotten shallower. Sounds like he was a good man, I said quietly. He was the best. We fell back into silence, and I finished the outline of the lighthouse, moving carefully across her shoulder blade. The waves came next, then the beam of light stretching across her skin. I took my time with the script, making sure every letter was perfect. This wasn't just a tattoo. It was a way for her to keep him close. When I finally finished, I wiped down the area, applied ointment, and covered it with a clear bandage. All done, I said, stepping back. Want to see? She stood slowly, almost hesitant, and walked back to the mirror. When she turned and saw it, really saw it, her hand flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. It's perfect, she whispered. Thank you so much. I walked her through the aftercare instructions, gave her a sheet to take home, and told her to come back in a few weeks if she needed any touch-ups. She paid, tipped generously, and left. I thought that would be the end of it. Just another client with a meaningful tattoo, a story I'd carry for a while and then move on from. But 3 weeks later, she came back. Hey, she said, standing at my station with that same tentative smile. I know this might be weird, but I want another one. I raised an eyebrow. Already? Most people need some time before they're ready for number 2. I know, she said. But I've been thinking. Michael had this phrase he used to say all the time, especially on the hard days. I want it somewhere I can see it. A reminder. What's the phrase? She pulled out her phone, showed me a note. The light always finds a way through. Simple, powerful. I could see why it mattered to her. Where do you want it? I asked. Inner forearm, she said. So I see it when I'm working, when I'm doing everyday things, when I forget. I nodded. I can do that. Let me sketch it up. And just like that, it started. Over the next 6 months, Beth became a regular. Every few weeks, she'd come in with a new idea, not random, impulsive pieces, but carefully chosen designs that each told a part of Michael's story or her journey without him. A compass on her ribs, because he'd always been her sense of direction. Small waves along her collarbone, because they'd spent their honeymoon at Cannon Beach. And she said the ocean was where she felt closest to him now. A phoenix on her thigh, because she was learning to rise from the ashes of losing him. Each session, we'd talk. At first, it was mostly about Michael. The way he'd make terrible dad jokes that somehow always landed. His obsession with fixing things around the house, even when they didn't need fixing. How he'd hum Bruce Springsteen songs while cooking dinner. But slowly the conversation shifted. She started asking about me. You ever been married? She asked one afternoon, while I worked on the Phoenix. No, I said simply. Ever close? I hesitated, my hand pausing mid-shade. Once, long time ago, didn't work out. She didn't push, just nodded. I'm sorry. But the next session, I found myself offering more. Her name was Jenna. We were together for 4 years. She had issues, anger mostly. Took me too long to realize I didn't have to stay. Beth looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes. Not pity, recognition. That must have been terrifying, she said quietly. It was, still is sometimes. I don't really date anymore because of it. I get that, she said. After Michael died, people kept telling me I'd find someone else eventually, like he was replaceable, like I should just move on. She shook her head. I'm not ready. Maybe I never will be. You don't have to be, I said. There's no timeline for this stuff. She smiled, small but genuine. Thanks for saying that. By the 4th month, our sessions felt less like appointments and more like something else. Friendship, maybe. Or at least the beginning of one. We'd spend as much time talking as I did tattooing, and I realized I looked forward to seeing her name in my book. It was strange, unsettling even, because I'd spent so long keeping people at arm's length. But Beth felt safe, like she wasn't asking me to be anything other than exactly who I was. One evening in early spring, after finishing delicate lettering along her ankle, brave enough to heal, she asked me something that caught me off guard. Do you ever think about leaving Portland? Starting over somewhere new? I cleaned her skin, peeled off my gloves, and leaned back. Sometimes, but I don't know where I'd go. This is all I've known since I was 21. Maybe that's the problem, she said. Sometimes staying feels safer than leaving, even when staying hurts. I looked at her, surprised by how much that landed. You thinking about leaving? I don't know, she said. Michael and I bought a house together. After he died, everyone said I should sell it, that it'd be too hard to stay. But I couldn't let go. It's where all my memories of him are. She paused. But lately, I've been wondering if I'm holding on to a ghost instead of actually living. What would living look like? I asked. She thought about it, her fingers tracing the fresh bandage on her ankle. I don't know yet, but I think it starts with admitting I'm allowed to want more than just survival. We sat there for a moment, The shop quiet around us. Just the faint hum of the fridge in the break room and the distant sound of rain starting to tap against the windows. Can I tell you something? I said. Yeah, you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. Not because you lost someone and kept going, but because you're still trying to figure out what that means. That takes guts. Her eyes welled up, and she laughed through the tears. I don't feel brave most days. None of us do, I said. But you show up anyway. That counts. By the 6th month, Beth had 8 tattoos, each one a small testament to Michael or her own healing. But something had shifted between us. The conversations were lighter now, less heavy. She'd tell me about her job as a school counselor, working with kids who were dealing with loss or trauma. I'd share stories about ridiculous client requests or Rick's ongoing feud with the coffee shop next door that kept stealing our Wi Fi. One day, as I finished shading a small sun on her wrist, she said something that made me freeze. You remind me of him sometimes, Michael. I looked up, startled. How? The way you listen. Like you're really hearing what someone's saying, not just waiting for your turn to talk. He was like that. She smiled. I think that's why I keep coming back. You make me feel less alone. I didn't know what to say. No one had ever compared me to someone they loved and lost. It felt like a responsibility I wasn't sure I could carry. I'm glad, I said finally. That you're not alone, I mean. She nodded, and we finished the session in comfortable silence. That night, after she left, I sat alone in the shop, staring at my reflection in the mirror. For the first time in years, I didn't see someone broken beyond repair. I saw someone who'd survived. And maybe, just maybe, someone who could let another person in without everything falling apart. The 8th session was different. Beth came in on a Thursday evening, my last appointment of the day. She didn't have a new design this time, just asked if we could talk. Sure, I said, gesturing to the chair. What's on your mind? She sat down, her hands folded in her lap, and took a deep breath. I think I'm done. With the tattoos, I mean, for now. My chest tightened, though I wasn't sure why. That's okay. You've gotten some beautiful work. You should be proud. I am, she said. But the thing is, I don't want to stop seeing you. I blinked. What? I mean as friends, she said quickly, her cheeks flushing slightly. Or whatever you're comfortable with. These sessions, they've been the highlight of my week for months. Talking to you, being around you, it's helped me more than you know. I don't want that to end just because I ran out of skin to tattoo. My heart was pounding, that familiar instinct to pull back, to protect myself before things got complicated. But when I looked at her, at the way she was sitting there, vulnerable and honest and not asking for anything I couldn't give, something in me softened. I'd like that, I said. Friends. She smiled, and it was genuine, warm, unguarded. Yeah? Yeah. We started meeting outside the shop after that. Coffee at a place near Powell's Books, walks through Forest Park when the rain let up, the occasional brewery where we'd sit in a corner booth and talk for hours. It was easy, comfortable in a way I'd forgotten friendships could be. She told me more about Michael, about their life together, how they'd tried for years to have kids and it never happened, how they'd made peace with it and decided they'd be that couple who traveled and spoiled their friends' children instead, how she'd spent the first year after his death barely functioning, going through the motions, until one day she'd woken up and decided she had to find a way to live again, even if it hurt. I told her more about Jenna, about the night I'd finally left after she'd thrown a plate at my head, and I'd realized I was one bad argument away from something worse. how I'd crashed on Rick's couch for 3 months while I got back on my feet, how I'd built walls so high I wasn't sure anyone could climb them. You don't have to tear them down all at once, Beth said one afternoon as we sat on a bench overlooking the city from Council Crest. Just maybe let someone stand at the gate for a while, see what happens. I looked at her, at the way the gray Portland sky framed her face, and felt something shift. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. The quiet, terrifying hope that maybe I could trust someone again. I'm scared, I admitted, of messing this up, of hurting you or getting hurt. Me too, she said. I'm terrified, actually, because caring about someone again means risking losing them again. And I don't know if I could survive that twice. So what do we do? I asked. She reached over, her hand finding mine. We take it slow. We're honest. And we don't run when it gets hard. I squeezed her hand. I can try that. That's all I'm asking. It took another 4 months before anything changed between us. We'd settled into this easy rhythm. Coffee twice a week, walks on weekends, texts throughout the day that made me smile at my station between clients. I'd started looking forward to her messages the way I used to look forward to nothing. One night in late summer, I invited her over to my apartment for the first time. Nothing fancy, just takeout Thai food and a movie on my busted laptop. We sat on my couch, close but not touching, and halfway through the movie, she fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I didn't move, just sat there, feeling the weight of her against me, the steady rhythm of her breathing, and realized I hadn't felt this content in years. When she woke up an hour later, groggy and embarrassed, she started to apologize. I stopped her. Don't, I said. It was nice. She looked at me, really looked at me, and something passed between us. A question unspoken. Marco, she said softly, I need to tell you something. Okay. I think I'm falling for you. And I know that's complicated and scary and probably too soon, but I can't keep pretending I'm not. Her voice wavered. But I also need you to know, if this is just friendship for you, I'll understand. I won't push. I needed to say it. My heart was racing, every instinct screaming at me to pull back, to protect myself. But when I looked at her, at the way she was sitting there with her heart in her hands, I realized something. I was falling for her too. It's not just friendship, I said quietly. Not for me either. Her breath hitched. Really? Yeah. I've been trying not to feel it because I didn't think I was ready. But Beth, you make me want to be ready. You make me want to try. She leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. When her lips met mine, it was gentle, tentative, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. But it was also real, solid, the kind of kiss that felt like coming home. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. This is terrifying. I know, I whispered, but let's be terrified together. We didn't rush after that. Some nights we'd just sit together, her hand in mine, watching bad TV or talking about everything and nothing. Other nights we'd share the hard parts, her nightmares about losing Michael, my panic attacks when someone raised their voice unexpectedly. We learned each other's triggers, each other's safe spaces. She met Rick, who gruffly approved with a nod and a, don't screw this up, kid. I met her friends, a tight-knit group of women who'd held her together after Michael died, and who interrogated me over brunch like I was applying for a job. I passed, apparently. 6 months into whatever we were calling this, Beth invited me to her house for the first time, the house she'd shared with Michael. I was nervous, unsure if I belonged in that space, but she took my hand as we walked through the door. I need you to know something, she said, leading me to the living room. On the mantel was a photo of her and Michael on their wedding day, laughing, young, full of life. He's always going to be part of my story, part of who I am. I know, I said. I wouldn't want it any other way. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. You're not replacing him, Marco. You're something different, something new. And I think that's okay. I think he'd want me to be happy again. I pulled her into my arms, holding her as she cried, and whispered into her hair, I think he'd be proud of you for finding your way back. A year after her first tattoo, Beth came back to the shop one last time. I want one more, she said, sitting in my chair. What is it? I asked, pulling up my stool. She handed me a piece of paper. On it was a simple design, a lighthouse, just like the first one. But this time, the beam of light extended further, illuminating the words, still standing. For me, she said, a reminder that I made it through, that we both did. I tattooed it on her other shoulder blade, the mirror image of Michael's lighthouse. And when I finished, when she looked at both of them in the mirror, his memory on one side, her resilience on the other, she smiled. Thank you, she said, turning to me, for everything. Thank you, I replied, for teaching me it's okay to let someone in again. She pulled me into a kiss right there in the middle of the shop, and I heard Rick chuckle from the front desk. We didn't have all the answers. We still had hard days, moments when grief or fear crept back in, but we had each other. And slowly, carefully, we were building something neither of us thought we'd get to have again. Not a replacement for what we'd lost, but something new, something ours. And that was enough. Capricci, have you ever met someone who helped you believe in second chances? Someone who showed you it's possible to heal and love again after everything falls apart? Drop a comment and share your story. If this one hits you where it counts, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories about love, loss, and finding your way back to hope. Disclaimer. This story is created purely for entertainment. Characters and events are fictionalized for storytelling purposes. We use AI-assisted tools for drafting with human review and editing to preserve quality and authenticity.